Bill, tell me your real name.
William Powell.
And I think your middle name is Addison, isn't it?
Right, William Addison.
William Addison Powell.
But I go by the name of Bill.
Bill. Bill, when were you born?
November the 3rd, 1926.
And where do you live now? What's your address?
4625 Rose Valley Road, Portsmouth.
Portsmouth, Ohio.
That's out at Rosemount.
Rosemount.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how long have you lived there?
Since 1950.
Where did you live before then?
Several places.
Okay.
I was born in Portsmouth
Uh-huh.
on Gallia Street, and we moved to Eden Park and Twin Valley, and then when we got married, we had an apartment on 17th Street, and then from there, well, we bought a place in Rosemount in 1950.
Were you born in the old General Hospital?
No, I was born at home.
You're born at home, okay. There was a lot of that back then, I think.
Everybody was born at home.
Everybody. Now, I'm going to ask you a little bit about your family. We're going to make a tree. So tell me who your parents were.
Bill and Opal Powell.
Bill and Opal Powell.
Yes.
Now, are you a junior?
Yes.
You are a junior?
Yep.
Okay, so your dad's name was?
Same as mine.
Same as yours. You are the junior, okay. And your mom's name was Opal. What was her maiden name?
Her name was Dawson.
Dawson? Mm-hmm. Were they from Portsmouth, Scioto County?
From Wayne, West Virginia, was where she was born and raised. And
how about your dad?
He was born and raised in Virginia.
Somewhere in Virginia?
Yeah.
You know where?
Yeah, Lurch.
Okay. And now I'm really going to test you.
Uh-oh.
What was your dad's parents' names?
Jim and Josephine Powell.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
What was Josephine's maiden name?
Lansdowne.
That's very good.
Yeah, I had to think a little bit on that one.
Have you had maybe yourself or other people go back in your ancestry and trace the name?
Yeah, we went back. My brother and, well, both of my brothers, they traced it back and they went over. We originally came from Welsh. And they got to checking, and when they went over there, they went down the street, and there was nothing but Powells on both sides of the street. And they told them what they was going to do, and they said, "How far back have you gone?" They said, "Back to 1600." He said, "If I was you, I'd stop." And my brother said, "Why?" He said, "You're going to be related to King Edward." No, Edwards. Who was it that chopped their heads off? What king was that?
Well, there was a King Edward the First, and he was pretty mean. And then
Well, that was the one. That was the one. He said, "Don't go any
Don't
farther."
go any further.
No.
There, okay, because Powells were related there. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's pretty neat. Now, on your mother's side, your mother, Opal, her name was Opal. And what was her maiden name again?
Dawson.
Dawson. Now, what about her parents' names? Do you remember them? Do you know them?
Unoka, it's an Indian name. That was her mother's name. And John was her dad's name.
Okay. Unoka?
Unoka.
Unoka.
E-U-N-C-A, I believe it is. C-O, Unoka.
Was she an Indian?
Partly.
Okay.
She was named, that's the Indian name, really.
Where were they from? Where did they were from?
They were from West Virginia.
Okay. Now, those were your grandparents on your mother's side. Do you know their parents? Do you know your grandfather's parents?
Yes, I can't think of their names. I know I can see their house. They lived in Coleman, West Virginia. It's just about 10 miles from Wayne. And I've been to their home before when I was 5 and 6 years old. I remember that. Mm-hmm. But he was an old preacher. He had his own church there, and had a big swinging bridge to his home. But I can't right now think. I do know the name,
If
but I
it
can't
comes
think
to
of
you,
it.
if it comes to you, just
All
blurt it
right,
out like.
okay.
What about your grandmother's parents' names?
My grandmother.
Your no, wait a minute. Your mother's parents' names, and your grandmother's name was Unoka. Her parents' names.
Yeah, you got me there now.
I tripped you up finally,
Yeah.
didn't I? Your brothers have done an ancestry, you say. They've gone back and traced it back. Do they have that written down somewhere?
No, but we got a book,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got pictures of one of my parents, one of my great grandparents. It was taken, in the 1800s, but they got a big book about that thick.
Mm-hmm.
But they finally quit when they told them over at Welsh. They said, I wouldn't go any farther.
Don't go back any further.
No,
Okay, all right. Who has that book?
I got one.
Okay, good. Now let's go forward a little bit here. Now, what's your wife's name?
My wife's name was Joyce. Her maiden name was Coakley.
Coakley. Is she living?
She-
She's living.
No,
Okay.
she passed away in the year 2000.
Okay. And did you know her parents' names?
Frank and Vivian Coakley,
Okay. Where were they from?
Virginia, Shenandoah Valley.
Okay. Now, did you have children?
Yes, they had, my wife was the oldest. And then she had a sister, Peg.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had a brother, Frankie.
Mm-hmm.
He was named after his dad, too.
Now, did you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah.
Okay. Who are they?
One of my sister was 2 years younger than me. She's passed away,
What was her name?
Rowena.
Rowena.
And my brother, Ronald Powell, he passed away, too.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got another brother that's living, Larry Powell. He lives in Washington Courthouse. And that's it, isn't it, Linda? Yeah.
Did you and your wife have children?
Oh, yes.
What are their names?
My oldest was Michael Wayne. That's Linda's husband. He passed away. He passed away when he was 62.
Okay. Have other children?
I've got a daughter,
Okay.
Linda Gale,
Okay.
and she married a Monovan.
Is she living?
Yes, she's living out back of Wheelersburg.
Okay. Okay. So you had a son and a daughter. Did you have any other children?
No,
Okay. Well, now, where did you go to school?
Clay High School. First year it was built,
When was it built?
1939.
And that was the first year.
I went to 7th grade there. And I graduated in 44. I went all the up to 44.
Is that the building out on 139 or
139.
139? That was.
They got a
the-
fire station in place of it now.
Okay. Did they tear it down?
Oh, yeah.
Did they? Okay.
Yep.
Were you sad to see that go?
Yeah.
I'll bet there are a lot of memories there. I bet.
A lot of memories.
Yeah.
That's where I met my wife.
Really? You went to school together.
We were 14 years old, and we were freshmen. I had been going there a couple of years. She'd been going to grade school at Rose Mountain on the old trail.
Yeah.
And then we both started our freshman year in, I think it was 1941.
Okay.
And we were both 14, and we hooked up just like that, didn't we, Linda? And we went together from 14, and we got married when we was 19. When I come off of this trip I was going to tell about.
Okay, we'll get to that.
All right,
I'll tell you,
all
we'll
right.
get to that. So you graduated in 1944 from high school, from Clay High School, and 1944, World War II is going on there. What
Right.
did you do? What did you do?
Well, got a job. I was going to school, and it got so bad that they said I could work as long as I kept my grades up, 80 or above. I could work Sunday and Monday, Friday and Saturday. I could work 4 days a week and go to school 3 days a week as long as I kept my grades up.
Who told you that?
The school board.
Okay. So you
I worked at the freight house when I was 16,
worked where?
at the NW freight house.
Oh, okay.
And there's several of us 16 years old doing that.
What did you do at the freight house? Handle
Truck freight up and down the platforms,
Okay.
going to different boxcars, going to different destinations.
Okay. Now you graduated in 1944, and did you go to work right then, right after you graduated? What happened to you?
Oh, I was still working, but I graduated when I was 17 because I'll be 18 in November. So I knew that's part of my story.
Okay. Tell your story. Go ahead.
You want the whole story now, or anytime you want to interrupt me, I don't care.
Okay, you start it, and if I want,
Okay.
I'll jump in.
Well, you already know my name, Bill Powell, and
That's right, Bill.
the only reason I'm down here today is my daughter-in-law, Linda.
Right over there she is.
Yeah, she talked me into it.
She twisted your arm.
Yeah. I said, no one wants to hear that story. It's not that exciting, I didn't think. Anyway, I come down here and to tell about the trip to Marseille, France. But before I start the Marseille, France story, I want to start at the beginning. I had just turned 15 the month before, and it was December the 7th, 1941. You know what day that is. I was into my front yard waiting on the man to come along in the car and throw the paper out to me. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he didn't throw it out. He motioned for me to come to the car. He said, "Go turn your radio on." I said, "Why?" He said, "President Roosevelt speaking. We've been bombed." I said, "Where?" He said, "Pearl Harbor." I said, "Where's Pearl Harbor?" He said, "I don't know where it is, but go turn the radio on." So I did that. And after the speech was over, my parents and I got to talking. One good thing, I don't have to worry about going to war. It'll be 3 years before I'll be 18 and it'll all be over with. Well, you know the end of that story, don't you? It lasted a lot longer than that. So when I graduated, I continued working at the freight house. And when I got 18, I got my papers that I was going to be drafted. I didn't want to be drafted, so I wanted to enlist. I wanted to go in the Navy. I tried to get in the Navy or Coast Guard. They wouldn't take no one. They're not taking anybody right now, they said. And anyway, I decided, I was talking to a man, he said, "If you want to go in the Navy that bad, why don't you try this merchant marine deal?" I said, "I don't know anything about it." He said, they'll hire you. And I said, "What do they do?" He said, "We haul supplies to different countries." And I thought, well, that sounds like a winner. Whew. I didn't know what I was getting into. Anyway, I had my mother go with me. We went to Cincinnati. We signed up. They said, "We'll take you. We'll send you the papers and tell you where to go and what to do in a few days." And they did that. So I got the papers to get on the train and head for New York. My training would be in New York at Sheepshead Bay. So when I got on the train, I thought I recognized one of the guys sitting there, and he was a railroader too. He worked up in the yards doing something. Anyway, I got to talking. He said, "Yeah, I enlisted in the Merchant Marine," so we were both headed for the same place. So we got to New York. They met us, put us on the subway there. We went to the Sheepshead Bay. That's just about a half a mile past the Coast Guard facilities where they got everything to train people with. Because when we got to Sheepshead Bay, all we had was just barracks and a mess hall, but we had to march every day down to the Coast Guard to get our training. Like jumping into the water, maybe 50 feet, and they gave us a suit to wear when we did that. It was all rubber, and I wondered why the bottom of it was so heavy, They had lead that thick in the bottom of the shoe. It's a solid rubber suit. You zip it all the way up. I said, what's the lead for? It's so heavy. Well, he said, when you have to abandon ship, you got to jump. And he said, the lead in the bottom of your shoes is heavy enough to where you don't have to lay on your back and float or your stomach. You can be vertical in the water. I said, well, that makes sense. So we trained to do that. We trained guns, shooting 20s and 40s and doing all other kind of things. And then we go back to the barracks, and one night I was standing guard. We had to take turns once a month or so. And I kept seeing this big orange ball of, looked like a bomb went off out in the Atlantic, looked like about 10 miles. I asked one of the officers, I said, what is that out there? I've seen it twice now. He said, you don't know what that is? I said, no. He said, the German sub's getting us as we leave port. He said, if they don't get you out there that quick, they'll follow you all the way where you're going. They'll finally get you. Boy, I knew I'd signed up in the wrong place. Anyway, I got to talking, and I said, well, I don't want to be no oiler, because I know they work down below the water surface. If one of them torpedoes hit, I want to be up higher than that. I said, there's nothing else I can do. And he said, well, you can train to be a deckhand. And I said, nothing else? And he said, you like radio? And I said, no. He said, well, they have got one position you can study for. It's about a compass. Said if you want to be it's equivalent to a helmsman in the Navy. All you do is steer ships. I said, that sounds like when I'd be on the bridge all the time. I'd be up high enough where I could jump if I got hit. So I said, let's do that. So I took a test for a few weeks, and I passed it, and I was qualified to steer tankers and Liberty ships. That's the only two I was qualified for. That's about the only two the Merchant Marines had. They had others, but that was their two main ships. So I got to do that. And then in the meantime, on the weekends, me and two or three others would get weekend passes. We'd go over in Times Square and get off. Pennsylvania Station had a balcony up on top, and so Grand Central did too. And up on top of those balconies, they had ping pong tables. And any of us smoked or drank back then. And we'd go over there and we'd play ping pong all day and half the night. Then we'd walk up towards Circle Square up around 67th Street, and they had a YMCA up there we could stay for 50 cents a night. And we did that on the weekends. So we came back, and he's getting I got there in January of 45, and about 1st of April, in a period of 18 days, President Roosevelt died, Hitler committed suicide, and Mussolini died in 18 days, all three of them. And Germany gave up. So I thought, boy, I've really lucked out. Them subs ain't going to be working no more now. I want to head east instead of being sent west to fight the Japanese, you know. So I thought I had it made. I hope they send me east. I got my papers to ship out in April after those three died. It wasn't east, John. San Francisco in the Pacific. I was assigned to a tanker. I was going to steer a tanker. Boy, that was the worst kind, because if anything dropped close to you, you're just going to be a puff of smoke. So I dreaded that, but it took us 3 days to get out there. They put us in boxcars, 4 men to a boxcar, and they had 4 bunks in each boxcar. They were clean bunks and everything, but I remember going down through towns like Des Moines, Iowa, 5 or 10 miles an hour, right down through the middle of town. The Red Cross girls would come out with donuts and coffee and hand them up to us as we was going along, you know. We were treated good going out. So I got to San Francisco. They took me aboard ship, and we had to wait until they got their full crew before we could move. And we did that from April on up to about August. We'd run up down the coast some, and then we'd go out in the Pacific. Sometime we'd be heading for the Marshall Islands with supplies for planes and things like that. Anyway, we had got back off of a trip at sea, but in the meantime, while we was out there, we only had one casualty. The sea can get so rough, and a tanker, when it's loaded, you only got about 3 foot freeboard out of the water. Now, if you're running light, nothing in it, then it's out of the water quite a bit. But anyway, we had about a 3 foot freeboard, and when I got off of the wheel for 2 hours, I had coffee for 1 hour. It was my turn to go to the bow lookout and relieve a man. And it was rough. And a tanker's got a catwalk. That's what we called it. It goes from the bow to the bridge, and then from the bridge to the stern. In case you're going from one end to the other, you hold on. They got ropes on each side. And if the sea's rough, you better be holding on with both hands. Well, it was my turn to go to the bow lookout, and I went up there, and after 1 hour, I kept looking. My relief didn't show up. And I waited another hour. No one showed up. Finally, someone did, but he wasn't the man who was supposed to relieve me. They said, "Boy, I'm glad you're here." And I said, "Why?" He said, "We can't find," I forget the other guy's name. It's been 73 years, John. Anyway, he said, "We can't find him. And we couldn't find you either. We was hoping you were still on your post." I said, "Yeah, I'm still here." He said he undoubtedly got washed overboard. Probably wasn't holding on too good. And some of those waves are so big when we hit them. There is a metal cover on the tip of the bow that I can duck under, and get out of the way if I see a wave coming. Anyway, that was the only casualty we had. We got back to San Francisco one day, and I've seen a lot of celebrations, John, in my lifetime, but I've never seen nothing like I saw at San Francisco. They announced that the Japanese had given up. They called it VJ Day. You've probably read about that. I've never seen so many people in a street in all my life for 2 days, solid. And anybody who was in service, they'd bring out sandwiches or anything you wanted to eat, but they'd give it to you. He was a serviceman. Anything you wanted to drink, they give it to you. That went on for 2 solid days. And finally, I got to checking, well, I got enough time in, I can go home for 2 weeks. So I jumped on a train, come on home, didn't cost me nothing. I got home while I was still single then. And my 2 weeks is up, and I told my girlfriend then, Joyce, I told her that I was going to have to ship out. I thought I'd go to Norfolk. And she said, whatever you want to do. And I said, if I don't ship out, they'll draft me. So as long as you stayed in the Merchant Marines, they couldn't draft you. But if you quit, you was eligible for a draft. So I took off and went to Norfolk. And when you get to a port like that, John, they got a blackboard as long as this wall here, maybe 40 foot long, but 12 foot high. And they got names of ships, and they got underneath it, we need 2 deckhands, we need 3 oilers, we need 1 AB. And the AB in the Merchant Marines is equivalent to a helmsman in the Navy. So I saw this one ship, I kept looking at it. We had a lot of them going to South America and places. The war was over, both places, so I saw this one ship, I forget the name of it. It was a Liberty ship. And it was headed to Marseille, France. This is where my story began.
Okay.
So it needed an AB just to steer the ship. So I selected that. So they rubbed it off. I didn't need but one. And I reported to the ship there in New York. They're at Norfolk. And when we got all the men we needed, then we could ship out. And the ship was already loaded for us. It was loaded with nothing but coal. It was around September when all this took place, because the Japanese surrendered in August. So I come home and then I shipped out in September. So they was wanting this coal awful bad. Winter was going to come on and they needed it over there. Well, I got to figuring it's going to take us about 3 weeks to get across the pond. It's going to take us a month or two to unload, and that long to come back. That's not too long a trip. So I decided to take it. Well, we took off, and those Liberty ships run about equivalent to about 10 miles an hour. It takes a while to get across. I remember going through the Rock of Gibraltar, and the captain said, "We're going to dock here until daylight." And I said, "I thought we was going to Marseille." He said, "We are." We stopped at a little place in North Africa called Oran, O-R-A-N. Nobody got off because we weren't going to be there that long. So it was at daybreak, we took off. I said, "Why are we stopping here?" He said, "The mines that the Germans had planted in the Mediterranean, they're all breaking loose." Back then, we couldn't detect a mine back in that time of the year like they have now. They got things now they can see in the dark. But he said, "We want to be able to see where we're going. We got to dodge them." And that's what we did. We saw 11 mines and we got rid of all of them. When we got by one, we'd go up in the gun turrets and turn our 20s and 40s on them, and they would explode in the water. We got rid of 11 of them, but we got to Marseille and docked. And I said, "Who's going to unload us?" I said, "The Frenchmen?" They said, "No." I said, "We're not going to unload it." They said, "No." I said, "What am I supposed to do?" He said, "You're on vacation." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You got nothing to do." Now, he said the oilers have to go maybe an hour every day down below, take care of different things. The deck hands have to chip paint a little bit, but nobody's going to work a long time. But all you do is on the wheel. So he said, you're free to do whatever you want to do. Well, I got out on the deck one day and I saw these guys unloading. We had winches on that Liberty ship to unload the coal. And it was all Germans. They was talking German. And I talked to one of my officers, and he said, "Now the captain of those are prisoners of war, POWs. There's 12 of them. But the captain, he's in charge of those 12. He doesn't do any work, but he sees that they do the work. And the Frenchman's on the ship with guns, seeing that no one escapes or anything." So I got to talking to this captain, and he could talk real good English. And I watched him eat one day. John, the potato was that big. The biggest potato I ever seen. It looked like it had been boiled in clear water. And they put it in a big bowl. And they had a piece of brown bread that big, and they drank water. I looked over at the Frenchmen. They're sitting over there eating their lunch. They all had a bottle of wine with theirs. I felt sorry for them guys, those POWs. I felt sorry for the captain too. So I'd talk to him every once in a while, and we become pretty good friends, you know. But I had nothing to do of a day, so I'd watch him some days, and one day I went walking. I went over in the city of Marseille and looked around and come back. I was telling a couple guys, he said, "Well, we're going over tomorrow." And I said, "Well, I'll go with you." So I noticed they had a sack. Each person had a sack. I didn't have anything. I said, "What's in your sack?" He said, "Cigarettes." I said, you want to sell them?" He said, "That's easy done." He said, everybody's wanting cigarettes. And so I watched them. They'd walk down, we was walking together, and these Frenchmen would come up and go cigarette? They could say that, and they'd shake their head yes, and they'd say how much. They knew to say that. Well, I found out what they was getting for a carton of cigarettes. Well, I didn't smoke or drink either one. They knew that, and they said, go ahead and get your cigarettes, and we'll buy them off of you, and then we'll sell them. I said, no, I got a better idea. I'll get my cigarettes, and I'll sell them. So that's what I did. I accumulated a few cartons of cigarettes, and I knew what they was getting per carton. So I went over there, put them in a sack. I don't know more, hit the midtown, somebody wanted to buy them. I told them what I wanted. They paid me. One time, he told me he didn't have any money. He let me know, but his buddy down the alley with somebody else, and he wanted me to walk down that alley, and it was getting dark. You couldn't do that nowadays. No way. I did that one time, and I said I'll never do that again. But they were nice. They paid me what I wanted. I took all that money that I had, all francs, and I knew where a jewelry store was over there, and I went over there and spent all them francs. They had some homemade clocks that the Frenchmen had made that would fold up. They were alarm clocks and good clocks. They were expensive. I bought 4 of them. I kept one myself. I give my girlfriend, my wife to be, I give her one, I give her family one, I give my family one. So I got them back home all right. So one time that we was over there looking around, and we met some Army men. And they said, what do you guys do for a day? We said, nothing. We ain't got nothing to do. They said, why don't you come with us? So we got an Army base here in Marseille. Said, take you over there and let you eat with us. We'll show you around town. So there was me and another guy said, yeah, we'd like to do that. We went over there on their base and eat dinner with them. He took us and showed us all around the base, let us get down in a tank and showed us the guns and everything. And it was really interesting. He said, tomorrow, I'll take you someplace else. So the next day, they come and got us in a Jeep and took us around and showed us all the places in the city of Marseille. It's a pretty good sized city. Then he said, we'll go up the coastline here. I remember the 2 little cities that we went through, both of them about the size of Lucasville probably. But one of them was called Portobouc and the other one was called Martigues. And they showed us both of those cities. We was gone all day long. And we did that more than once or twice. Spent a lot of time during the month just loafing around with the Army men, you know, because they didn't have anything to do either. So anyway, I come back and we got word that the ship was almost empty. We're going to be leaving in a couple of days. So I thought, well, one night I went down in the galley by myself. It was dark. No one saw me go down. I was going to make me a sandwich. I seen this ham that the cook had baked, and it was about that big a ham. I sliced that ham up into 13 of the largest sandwiches you ever seen, and I put them in a basket, and I went up there and knocked on the door of the captain, and told him I had something for him. Would the men be offended if I give him something? Oh, he said they'd be tickled to death. I did that, and I went back the next night. I saw this birthday cake. It was about this long, it was flat, just a flat cake. Every time one of us guys had a birthday, they'd make a cake, you know, and put a candle on it. But he had just baked it and iced it. I cut that up in 13 big pieces. And I put that in the basket and took it up there. And he said, oh, they won't know how to act. I said, just don't say anything. He said, I know what you mean. I knew that I was going to get blamed for it, but I really felt that they wouldn't say too much when they found out what I was going to do with it. But when I got done with the ham and the cake, I took the crumbs and the pieces of ham, what was left, throwed it overboard. No trace of the ham or cake nowhere. Well, I heard later that the cook was asking different ones. Somebody stole my ham. And then the next day, somebody stole my birthday cake. I had to do it all over again. Do you know who did it? And they said, no. Nobody said a word to me. And I wasn't about to volunteer that I was the one that done it. But if they'd asked me, I wasn't going to lie to them. I was going to tell them, because I knew they probably wouldn't say too much. But nobody never did say a word to me, and I got by with that. So we was going to leave the next day, and the captain knew it. The captain of the Germans knew it. And he told me, he said, when it gets dark, come up to my room. And I said, all right. I figured he had something for me. I went up there, and he went to the locker, and he come out with this book. The front and back cover was gone, and he said, I want you to have this. He said, it's an interesting book. I said, it's all German. I can't read German. He said, when you get back home, he said, somebody will know German. They'll read it to you. I said, all right, I appreciate it. He come back and went to the locker, and he come back, and he was a pilot for the Luftwaffe, Germany. He had this real beautiful cap. He said, I want you to have this cap. I said, I can't take that cap. That's too nice. He said, I got another one. And then he went to the locker, and he come back, and I couldn't believe what I was looking at. John, he had them black boots that come up to your knees, shiniest boots you ever did see. Me and him wore the same size. He said, I want you to have these boots. I said, I can't take them boots from you. He said, I got another pair. When you get the captain, you can wear boots. I said, those boots look like the kind of Hitler wore. He said, they're identical. Exactly. Well, I wouldn't have took any amount of money for those boots. And so I took them back to my room, and the guys, there's 4 to a room. We called them a room, a forecastle instead of a room. And I was showing them those boots, and they said, what are you going to do with sell them here before you leave? And I said, no, I'm taking them home. He said, you ain't going to get home with them boots. I said, oh, yes, I will. He said, no, you got to go through customs. I said, I know that. He said, you ain't going to get home with them boots. He said, we've been down this road before. We know how they act. When they see them boots, they're going to take them away from you. You're not allowed to take them home. They're going to keep them themselves. I said, oh, surely they won't do that. And he said, oh, yeah, it's happened to us before. Anything valuable, they'll keep it. So I got to thinking, how in the world am I going to get them boots home? And I didn't tell anybody what I was going to do, not anyone. I went out, when it got dark at night, I went out on the stern, and I seen a lifeboat with a big canvas over it. We had a lot of lifeboats on them Liberties. I raised that canvas and stuck them boots and cap down in that lifeboat. And I told the guy that I was rooming with there in the room, I said, I'll give you $20 if you'll go through customs and wait, come back to the stern and wait on me, and I'll throw them boots off to you. He said, where you got them? I said, I'm not going to tell you where they're hid. All I want you to do is come back to the stern, I'll throw the boots off, you put them in the sea bag, and I'll meet you. Well, I knew that was illegal to do that. And I started not to do it, but I was so desperate to get them boots home, I'd do anything. So that was the plan. No one knew where the boots were, only me. So we started back toward, we was going to dock in Boston. We got within, I could see the shoreline of Boston. Whenever you get back and you're going to dock, you have to wait. They send what they call a pilot out to get you. They bring him out in a motorboat. He knows the depth of the water all around the docks where you're going to dock, more so than the captain of the ship or the mates. Anyway, we told them where we were, and they said, go ahead and anchor out there, and we'll come and get you in the morning. And they said, why? And he said, we got a hurricane coming up the East Coast. It's almost here now. And the water's too rough to bring the pilot out. The hurricane will be by here by daylight. We'll come and get you. So that was the deal. The captain says, drop an anchor and we'll head the ship toward the hurricane. It was getting pretty rough then, getting dark. So that's all I did was kept the ship steered into the hurricane. It got so bad, the anchor broke. He dropped the other anchor, and an hour later it broke. When you're running light like that, we were light coming back from Marseille, you know. All we had was a little bit of ballast in the bottom. That's the hardest ship in the world to steer, is the one that's not loaded. Because you're just like a pop can in the water. And the bow would go up, and then the stern would go up. And then when the stern would come up one time, and we called it the screw. It was really a propeller. Before we could get it cut back down, one time it flew off. There we were, no propeller, no anchors. We put out an SOS. They said, sorry, do the best you can. We'll find you tomorrow in the morning. We can't move. The hurricane's too bad. Oh, it got so rough. I was on the wheel about that time. Our old captain was on one side with the first mate, and the second mate was on the other side of the wheelhouse on deck. I saw him come by me on his back. We had took about a 45-degree list sideways, and then we went back this way, and that's when he lost his balance, and he was on his back. He went up against the bulkhead, and when we had another list, he went back, and they caught him over there and held on to him. But that's how rough it was, because we couldn't stay headed toward it. We had no control of the ship at all. We were just floating, and it got really bad. Boy, I couldn't wait to just go back to that lifeboat. So I watched, and no one saw me, and it was almost getting pretty close to daylight. I went back there to the lifeboat. I kept looking. Well, I know that lifeboat's supposed to be here. You know what I'm going to tell. That lifeboat had been hit we had a lot of damage on deck. Stuff had fell over and hit. Something had hit that lifeboat, it was gone. There I lost my cap, my boots. I wouldn't have took any amount of money for them. So that was really disheartening to lose all that. So we started back. And I told the guy, I said, forget about the boots. I said, it probably turned out for the best. I wasn't supposed to do that no way to start with. It's illegal. So I was on the bow one time. The sea was real smooth, was headed back toward Boston. And I got to thinking what the Navy, the Navy furnished us 7 men on a Liberty ship. They manned the 3-inch gun on the bow and a 5-inch gun on the rear. We took care of the 20s and the 40 millimeters. And I remember what they used to tell us, said, you merchant Marines make a lot of money, a lot more a month than we do. But he said, when you get old, it's going to cost you. He said, the government's going to take care of us. I said, you guys are going to have to put your own bill. And I said, yeah, I know that. So I knew I'd picked the wrong outfit. But as luck had it, you know, later on Congress gave us the Bill of Rights, same as them. So I lucked out there.
Pretty good.
Well, I came home then and from that trip, and I told my girlfriend, we decided to get married January the 7th. And I said, I'm going to quit the Merchant Marine. And she said, they'll draft you. I said, I know that. But somebody at the draft board was talking to me. He said, now, if you ever quit the Merchant Marines anyway soon, I'm going to tell you a little secret. They're not taking anybody unless they're in perfect shape. No surgery of any kind. They'll turn you down because both wars are over. And you have You have to be tip-top shape to get in. Well, when I was working at the freight house, when I come back, I had dropped a weight on one of my right foot, and it damaged my big toe real bad. I wasn't limping, I was still working, but it hurt. So I thought, well, if I go up there now, if they draft me now, I got a good chance of them turning me down. And my wife-to-be, no, she wasn't my wife at that time. It was after that. They loaded me on a bus. I got my papers that I was going to be drafted, headed for Korea, I guess. Had sent me to Columbus for examination. As soon as I took my shoe off, a doctor was sitting there. He said, "What is that?" I said, "I got hurt working." He motioned for another doctor. "Come over here." He said, "Look at that." They both looked at it. He said, "Next." Boy, that was the best news I ever heard.
That was your lucky big toe.
That was a lucky big toe. You got that right, John. And anyway, I was deferred. So that's just about the way my story of Marseille ended. And of course, I made another trip, but I didn't talk about that. I went to Antwerp once, but that's another story. It's not as interesting as the Marseille. That's the reason I wanted to come down here. So as we all say when we're on these walkie-talkies and phones, and all I can say is over and out.
Okay.
Any time you got a question, well, I'm sure you have.
I do. I want to ask you, you said you went to Antwerp. That would be Belgium, right?
Yeah.
You went to Belgium. Okay.
That was another trip.
That's another story, right?
That's another story.
What were you carrying in the ship then? Was it coal at that time?
No,
too?
not to Antwerp.
What was it?
It was tanks and things like that.
Tanks.
Yeah, they needed supplies,
Okay.
a lot of ammo.
Okay.
And we had to go up Antwerp River. Did you ever see a picture of that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sunken ships all over the place.
Now this was after the war, right?
Yeah, I know it. And we had to dodge all those, some of them sticking out of the water, the tops of the ships sticking out of the water. We had to dodge them. I know the captain of our ship, it was a Liberty. He said, "We got a lock to go through in this river." The Netherlands was on one side, just loaded with windmills, big ones, big as this building. Anyway, they said, "Do you ever go through that lock up there?" And I says, "No." He said, "Can you do it?" I said, "The other guys do it, don't they?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "We only got 1 foot freeboard on each side of the lock. We don't want to touch them." And he said, "Well," I told him, I said, "Well, if the others do it, I can do it too." We got through it all right. But it's not as interesting story as, except, you ever go through a windmill, a real one?
No, I haven't.
I got to do that. The Netherlands was right across the river there.
Sounds interesting.
What?
Sounds interesting, was it?
You'd be surprised when you walk into one. You think you're in some kind of a stadium. It's that big. I was surprised. Mm-hmm. I really was. It was really interesting to watch. Okay. Yeah. But I like the Marseille story the best.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. I'll go back a little bit. What time? You got to be somewhere?
I got plenty of time.
Okay.
I've been retired 31 years, John.
Where'd you retire from?
N&W. I was a railroad engineer.
Were you?
I'm between here and Cincinnati mostly. I spent almost 40 years running trains.
Really?
Yeah.
From here to Cincinnati?
Mostly. When I hired in between here and Williamson as a fireman, and then I worked as an engineer between here and Columbus on the valley, they call it. I didn't like that either. I liked the Cincinnati run. We call that the P-vine.
The P-vine?
Yeah, because it was up a hill, down a hill, curvy, 35-mile-an-hour curve, 60-mile-an-hour curves. I like to run trains, especially passenger trains. I like to run those. Some of them you can make up a lot of time on.
Can you?
Unbeknown to the company. But I enjoyed running. You remember the Powell era? When
I do.
I run that many a time.
I do.
I even run, they thought once they'd run Amtrak down that road. I caught an Amtrak train had an old Pennsylvania, we called them some kind of a wagon, covered wagon, we called them. I didn't like to run them. You'd go around a curve, you'd be over here, your rail would be over here, and you'd think you was off track. I didn't enjoy running Pennsylvania covered wagons.
When did you go to work? You went to work for the N&W after you got out of the Merchant Marine?
Back to the freight house, and as soon as I got 21, I wanted a job. I knew what I wanted to do when I was 5 years old, John.
What was that?
My dad was a machinist over at the shops.
N&W?
It's a roundhouse.
Okay.
And he'd take me over every 2 weeks and get a check, and I'd go with him. I was 5 and 6, 7 years old. He'd stick me up on one of them steam engines. Never had no such thing as diesels back then when I was 6, 7 years old. And I used to go down in Virginia to my cousins and watch those passenger trains come in, and the coaches are all lit up. I said, someday I want to run one of those. And I wasn't very old, and that's all I ever wanted to do.
So
I got to do it.
You got out of the Merchant Marine and you went back to work at the freight house
Until I was 21.
And at 21, then you sort of graduated to the railroad, so to
I
speak.
went and got a job. I knew they was hiring.
Okay.
You couldn't get a job unless you was 21.
My grandfather worked at the N&W.
Doing what?
He was a welder. He was a welder. William Williams.
You worked in the yards there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did. And
I was in the transportation department.
I remember he took me down there one time and lifted me up in a locomotive, that sort of thing.
It scared me to death. My dad would step on a pedal and the firebox door would open up.
Really?
I thought the thing was going to blow up. There was an office-looking fire in there.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to learn to run a steam engine.
So yeah, how long does it take? Did you have to go to school or some kind of training or what?
No, your best training is on the job.
So they just put you right in the cab?
Well, you start out firing. And after you're firing for somebody...
What's firing? Loading the coal in to put...
No, we had stokers.
Huh?
Stokers.
Okay.
And you had gauges.
Okay.
And there's a lot of things for a fireman to do on a steam engine, not too much on a diesel, except watching signals. But every engine, whether it's diesel or steam, definitely needs 2 men. Just like an airplane, they need 2 men.
Mm-hmm.
So you start out firing, and then after you're firing a while, they'll let you stop and let you run a little bit.
Let you play with it a little while.
And get familiar with it. Yeah. And pretty soon, when you're there 2 or 3 years, then the engineer runs one way or half a way, and you run the other half, or you run one way and they'll run back. When I was on a passenger run, I had a job firing a passenger job one time, and he would run the Powhatan to Cincinnati, and I'd run it back. And we did that for 2 years. And I enjoyed that. That was an easy job. But the steam engines had stokers, and we carried 300 pounds per square inch of steam. Mm-hmm. And we had a lot of hills to climb. One at Peebles and one at Batavia. And if you wasn't on a passenger train and you was on freight or coal, a lot of times you had to double the hills.
What do you mean by that?
Take half a train up and come back and get the other half.
Oh, okay.
They had side tracks upon, like if you're going to double a hill from Lawshee to close to Winchester, they call it Mount Zion, we'd take the head cut up, the brakeman would drop off in the side track, and I'd know exactly where to stop. I know how many cars we had. And each telephone pole to the next telephone pole was 3 car lengths. You could count that way. He'd make the cut. I'd wait a while and whistle off. He'd make the cut, and I'd take half the train up, put it in the side track, come back down the hill, get the rear end of the train, take it up, leave it on the main, go back in the side track, get the head cut, pull out, back up, couple up, and then the head brakeman would walk over, we'd go on into Cincinnati.
Go on your way.
On my way, yeah.
Did you like the Merchant Marine getting back? Did you like doing that?
I liked it after the war was over.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah, I liked it.
What was the best thing that ever happened to you in the Merchant Marine? Going to Marseille?
That was my favorite trip.
Yeah.
My best was when the doctor says next.
Okay.
I was glad because I just got married in January.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't want to go out no more.
You were ready to stay home.
I didn't want to go to Korea, and that's where they was headed.
Yeah.
And I took my chance on my toe, and it paid off.
That's what I said. Your lucky big toe.
Yep.
Now, do you remember your captain's names?
That was 73 years ago.
How about any of your crew members? Do you remember any of them?
No, not a one.
You never stayed in touch with any of them after
No.
you got out then? So, daggone about those boots and that hat. That was what was the name of that hurricane?
Yeah, it sure was.
We still have that book?
You know, I wouldn't have wore those.
You wouldn't have worn them.
I wouldn't have wore the boots, but I would have sure liked to show them off.
Yes, yes. You still have that book?
Yeah.
Do you?
I don't know where. It's in the cedar chest, I think.
Okay.
But I can't read it.
My daughter lives in Munich. We'll have to send it over to her and let her
Yeah.
read it. Do you have the clocks? Do you still have the
No,
clocks?
no.
What happened to the clocks?
They wore out, I guess.
They wore out?
I don't know where any of them are.
Oh, boy.
Boy, you're just full of questions.
Yeah, I am. I've got another one for you, too.
Uh-oh.
I always ask people this who were alive at that time, what were they doing when they learned about Pearl Harbor? And you told me you were out there in the front yard, and the paperman came by. And
He didn't know where Pearl Harbor was.
Nobody knew.
No, not when I was 15. I didn't know
My
where it was.
grandparents didn't know where it was.
I remember the name, but I didn't know where it was.
Now, is that where's that house that you were standing in the yard of?
Twin Valley.
Twin Valley?
Yeah. Just as you start in Twin Valley.
Is it still there?
No.
What happened to it?
They bulldozed it down.
Did they?
Nothing there but empty lot in Linda. Yeah, it's just empty lot now.
I think you know a couple of Scioto County men that were in the Merchant Marines. You might mention their names.
There were a couple of Scioto County men in the Merchant Marines.
I only know of 3.
Who were they?
They may be others. I've never heard of it. John Huffman, he passed away last year.
Don Huffman.
He's the one I got on the train with and went to New York. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Linda. I forgot to tell that. Myself was 2, and Zeke Mullins.
Zeke Mullins.
You know Zeke Mullins.
was in the
Everybody in
Merchant
Scioto County knows Zeke Mullins. I talked to him up here at the VA up on Campbell. I've been up there. I've talked to him before. Yeah.
Okay.
I even met his brother in Arkansas one day.
You did.
Yeah, I was out there fishing.
You were fishing, and here's his brother.
Well, I come out of the restroom there at Bull Shoals in Arkansas. We'd been trout fishing, me and my wife, and we'd come out of the restrooms there, and this man was standing behind my car, and he kept looking at that license tag. He said, Scioto County. I said, you must be from Scioto County. You're the only one that pronounced it
Nobody
the way
pronounces
we do.
that.
And he says, no, I'm not. I'm from Arkansas, but I got a brother that lives in Scioto County. He said, you probably don't know him, but his name's Zeke Mullins. I said, yes, everybody knows Zeke Mullins. He's got his own radio program. So anyway, we talked while he said, I've been trying to get Zeke to come out here and live, but he won't do it. He won't leave the
He
county.
never left.
Never left, no. But I have talked to him.
Now,
But that's the only 3 I know of in the Merchant Marine.
Now in the Merchant Marines, did you get any medals or anything? Like if you're in the Army, you get a medal or something like that. Did they
I
ever
got
get,
my, no,
what'd you get?
papers.
Your papers, your discharge.
No, not only the discharge, I got papers where if I come home, if I wanted to get a job running a tug up and down the rivers, I could get hired.
There's your papers.
On 30 days and away from home 30 days. I didn't want that either.
Okay.
I just got married, so I still got my papers. I got my discharge.
Where were you discharged? In Norfolk or in Sheepshead or where? Boston? Where were you discharged?
I can't.
San Francisco.
I can't remember. It's on my discharge.
Uh-huh.
I've still got it. I can't remember which one it was. It must have been after the Antwerp trip.
Right. That might be Boston then or something. Well, now after when you're discharged,
They notify the draft board.
okay, did you call home? When you got discharged, here you are in Boston or wherever you got discharged, did you call home or how? Did they know that you'd got discharged
No.
or what? What happened there?
No, they didn't know I was going to be discharged. I didn't know it myself.
Uh-huh.
I come home and we got married. I went back to work at the freight house and got hurt.
Okay.
Then the draft board got a hold of me.
Yes.
They said, you haven't shipped out
All right.
and you're going to be drafted. So I took my chance on kind of
Did
a
you
lucky toe.
you showed up at the door of your parents there, and did they know that you were coming home at that time? You remember?
Back then, the way we communicated was Western Union.
Oh, yes.
I sent a telegram to my parents, and I sent a telegram to my wife.
Yeah. Okay. That you'd been discharged and you're coming
No,
home.
I hadn't been
Oh,
discharged.
no, that you're coming home.
I was coming home. I got my discharge after the draft board got a hold of me.
How'd you get home? On a train?
Train.
Is there anything else you want to say, Bill? Anything else you want to say?
Not really. I think I've went overboard here. I've
No.
talked too long.
Any of your other family ever in the service? Any of your?
I had two uncles. One of them was injured twice, Okinawa and Iwo Jima.
He must have been a Marine. Was he a Marine?
He was in the 4th Division Marines. There wasn't too many of them left.
Right.
But he got home.
Is he still alive?
No. And I had another uncle that was in the Army as a cook.
Okay.
He could cook.
He could cook.
He made good vegetable soup.
He's still alive?
No, he passed away.
Ah, yes.
I'm one of the old heads, John.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
Ralph.
Oh, yeah, another uncle.
Another Uncle
Yeah,
Ralph.
He was injured in France. He was crawling over a log fighting the Germans. And when he crawled over the log with his rifle, a sniper got him in the back
Oh.
and paralyzed him from the waist down.
Oh.
I'm driving his car today.
Are you?
Yeah, it's out there parked. The government gave him a brand new Cadillac,
What year?
88.
You're driving an
Still
88?
driving it. I got another Cadillac at home. It's an 87.
Okay.
Anyway, he was wounded, and he lived in Cincinnati. And the government gave him a car about every 4 years. But he went anywhere he wanted to go.
Yeah.
He sold me that Cadillac. He didn't like it. He couldn't get in and out of it too good. It's 2-door.
Okay.
He bought him a van where he controls on his wheelchair. The van in the garage, the backup would drop down the ramp. He'd go up the ramp, get up there with the steering wheel. It had slots. The wheelchair would drop in. He'd go to the store, go anywhere he wanted to go.
Now, just a little story about the Merchant Marine. At first, you didn't get benefits that the other military would get, did you?
We got paid a lot, John.
But you got paid a lot more than the ordinary military.
We'd make
didn't you?
sometimes $400 and some a month.
That was a lot of money then.
Oh yeah, compared to the Navy men aboard like $40 a month.
Right.
But what we did When we wasn't working, like when we was in port, we got so much. It wasn't as much as traveling. And it was broken down. When you're in the Mediterranean waters, the contract called for $5 extra a day on account of the mines were dangerous. We got $5 extra for dodging those mines. Now the company that I worked for to take the coal over was a couple of Jews. Blidberg and Rothschild was the name of the company that was in the coal business. He sold this coal to France. And we worked for companies. And when I was on the West Coast with Japan, I worked for Sun Oil Company, which later was Sunoco.
Sunoco.
But it was Sun Oil Company then. But they paid us a check.
That's who paid you then, Sunoco and the coal company.
Blidberg and Rothschild paid me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I meant to ask you one more thing here. Do you have any grandchildren?
Oh, yeah. I got 10.
Uh,
I got 9 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild.
Really?
Yeah, I'll be 92 here in November.
Really, 92.
Yeah. I was talking to a guy I worked with. We had a party when I was 80. He said, boy, you sure don't look like you're 80 years old. I said, I don't. He says, no, you don't. You look more like 90. So every time I see somebody, it was some lady. I volunteer my time now for hospice.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I've done that ever since my wife died. Mm-hmm. She was a volunteer all of her life.
Okay.
She told me, what are you going to do when I leave? She knew she was going. That was her wish. She wanted to go ahead of me.
Oh.
We talked about stuff like that ever since we was 14. Anyway, I volunteer 2 days a week for hospice. I go to nothing but nursing homes. I got one patient that I haven't been to but once, to his home out on McDermott Pike. I got to go out there this coming Thursday to see him. But I enjoy doing that, and my wife wanted me to do that. And I've done that now since the year 2000. I took
2000.
6 weeks test and passed it, and that's what I do.
But now I wanted to ask you one more thing about your grandchildren now. Are they older now? They're working and they're out on their own? And are any of them in the service, in the military? They're
No.
working, though, and raising a family, and you've got one great-grandchild.
One great one. He's
How old?
he's over 2, going on 7. I'm telling you, that kid, he knows more at that age than I did when I got married. He can do anything. He's over 2 years old. You got to watch him like a hawk.
I bet he's got you wrapped around your finger.
Yeah, there's the one right there is taking care of him mostly.
All right.
Yes, my daughter-in-law is taking care of him. She's with him about every day. She can tell you more about him than I could. But they do come up and see me about once a week.
Bill, I want to thank you for coming in. I really appreciate it. You got anything else you'd like to say?
No, I think I've talked long enough.
Did it go longer than you thought?
Oh, yeah. I don't even know what time we started.
I don't know either, but
What time, Terry, did we start?
well, 4:30, wasn't it?
4:15, 4:20.
Yeah,
Here, I told you 40 minutes.
over an hour. When I get them going, I keep them going.
Boy, I believe it. You got more questions than them Frenchmen had.
I want to shake your hand.
Well, I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So
Thank you for everything.
Maybe
you did.
the grandkids can look at it later.
100 years from now, and your grandkids and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
100 years from now, maybe I'll watch it with them.
Yeah, sure. Okay,
All right.
I'm done.
Over and out.